Before I talk about anything else, I want to tackle the controversy head on here. Assassin's Creed is a historical fantasy. Retainer or not, it doesn't matter. This is a historical figure they wanted to tell a story with. The first Assassin's Creed was never about the historical setting, it was a backdrop to add a sense of immersion. You were a Syrian man that killed Christians. Even when the game released, that's a pretty bold thing to be challenged. These games tell the story of people that weren't documented in history or literature because of personal biases. Yasuke is a black man with barely any records of him after 1582. It makes perfect sense to tell that story and make that into a Creed story. In other Japanese media, they represent Yasuke as a samurai. It's clear he's accepted for being that. It makes no sense to be mad by the fact to take an aspect, a person from history, and do something with it in media. Oh yeah, Connor Kenway, a native, helped George Washington win most of his battles in the Revolutionary War. Ezio killed the Borgia family. I cannot take you seriously if you generally call yourself a Assassin's Creed fan and love all the games and have issues with this. As a black man, it doesn't do much for me to see a black character represented like this. Like, oh cool, it's a black person. It really depends on how well he's written. If something is represented like a minority group, it doesn't make it woke or that it's bad. It makes it interesting. It adds a new layer of density to the writing. It isn't for DEI points or sweet baby ink. It is simply a creative choice. Assassin's Creed has always been about people that have not been represented in history. It is an interesting creative choice to do this. All because it represents a black person that you have not seen in history that go against what you perceive as history does not make it a bad thing. It is bad if it is written poorly. As a black man, I'll reiterate, it does not do anything for me to see him on screen. It does a lot for me if he's represented well, if he shows to be a character that is deep, that's introspective, that has elements of Creed, that an African slave that is brought to Japan and sees the world in a new perspective and has to deal with being rejected by society again, and finding his place among that. I feel like that is such a perfect place for the Creed. That is literally what the assassins represent. That is what the pirates represent. Edward Kenway's entire story was trying to find purpose. He was not accepted by the British, by the oppressors. He found piracy as a way to escape that oppression, and eventually the assassins. The same could be said for Yasuke. The same was said for Adewale. Having a black main character from history in an Assassin's Creed game where the assassins are against the oppressive force, the oppressive governments throughout history makes sense. This has always been Assassin's Creed at its core, and if you do not like it, that tells me how you engage with the franchise. I mean, look, if controversy has proven one thing, it does sell well, so touche on them, I suppose. There's plenty of other sources and people that are smarter than me that can refute all these arguments being thrown, so if you really care, I'll link some things below that I found that I think is interesting that further proves my point. Going through the trailer, we are introduced to Yasuke and his arrival. We know that he arrives in 1579 and that is when the game starts. Judging by history, we know he had close relationships with Oda Nobunaga. Nobunaga was a warrior who wanted to spread his own version of peace, killing anyone who wouldn't agree. The second character, Naoe, daughter of Fujibayashi Nagato. I feel like I'm butchering that to an extent, so I apologize. And it's clear based on the trailer that these two historical figures have separate ideals on the world. More so, we see Yasuke arrive with a fleet of ships. One of these ships bearing the Templar cross, more than likely confirming Nobunaga was a Templar. And I wonder if that will influence Naoe and Yasuke and how they work together. I don't think Yasuke would be a Templar willingly, especially considering that there's DLC involving both of these characters. I think having a character who is foreign to Japan and one that is native to it can make it for a really interesting and introspective way of thinking and looking at the world, especially when they have dialogue with one another. Which I think these games definitely are at their best when it does that with its narrative, and making that a main central piece. These two are minorities, especially Yasuke, who's a black samurai, and Naoe, who is a female shinobi warrior. There's a lot to them in terms of introspection, and I can't wait to see it come together. As they are very different people, the developers have described them to be very different in terms of personality. Yasuke being more introspective, thoughtful, and perhaps patient, Naoe being passionate, hard on her sleeve, and says what she thinks in the moment. But these differences aren't just in the writing and characteristics, but to the gameplay. Naoe will have the assassin archetype players such as myself would desire, focusing on stealth, traversing the map quicker, and tools. The tools that we can infer being shurikens, smoke bombs we can see on her belt, a Kurisama, which I think could be a really cool replacement for the rope dart if they don't plan to add that in. So there seems to be a decent variety of weapons and tools specifically for her. Yasuke definitely seems like the warrior archetype, using big weapons, taking on groups of enemies in one hit. He will have a bow, which is nice, so I imagine Naoe will be equipped with a blow dart. Honestly though, it sounds like Ghost of Tsushima's samurai and assassin class, but in a single player setting, and ideally more fleshed out to hold an entire game. We do know that the central gameplay loop will revolve around a spy system, which will have a foundation piece being the hideout, which apparently we can design and have a layout built for ourselves. It definitely sounds like it's taking a lot from Valhalla's settlement system, so I'm curious how much it'll take and how much it'll make it its own. And I wonder how in-depth the system will be. We know we can customize decorations, train and grow the Shinobi League, and the streets are saying that it will be comparable to the AC Brotherhood system. You recruit people, customize their loadouts, and then we can send them out on expeditions to gain resources. But that is what the streets say. Talking about what we know the least about the game is the parkour. Parkour is very much a key component to the games. We know that this game's engine is an updated version from the previous 4 games, promising to improve facial animations, lighting, etc. I've had discussions with people about parkour, and I don't think they could make a game set in this time period with classic Assassin's Creed gameplay. If you look at the art for the urban environments, they don't match the rather boxy design of Damascus or even Boston during the colonial era. I do not expect it to have the most complex systems, but I would like it to feel good. We know the grapple hook will be physics-based, so hopefully there's some creative ways to use that to get around the environment for rooftops. Ask yourself, do you see Altair able to move in these environments? In the case of Baghdad and Mirage, it had that classic Creed building design, but the systems didn't really support it fully. While in the case of a Japan urban environment, it lacks the ability where mechanics such as ejects would work. It would need something different, and I hope Shadows can provide that. Overall, we'll just have to wait and see how it all comes together. Given the fact that this game is made by the same people that made Odyssey, I have a bit of a confliction. On the one hand, everything sounds great on paper, it sounds like it should be what it needs to be. It sounds like what should be a RPG assassin-focused game. But we need to see how it all comes together, we need to see how it handles assassin elements. There's a lot more to it than just having a hidden blade or letting you be stealthy. It needs to retain a lot of core ideals, and I think that will be more relevant to talk about when the gameplay releases June 10th at Ubisoft Forward. I'm not going to come into the game wanting to hate it or anything like that. I am just hoping that at the very least it's good at what it does. You know, it may not even be for me, but I just hope that it's at the very least good. But we'll see. Thank you for watching. I haven't done a commentary video like this for some time, so this was a nice exercise. If you found what I said insightful, please like or subscribe, comment, whatever you feel necessary to do. Obviously, you're not obligated to do anything. Either way, I appreciate you for listening to me and staying till the end. Thank you for your time. Have a good one.